Thank you for tuning in to Eddie Paul's Tool Talk, brought to you by SolarRes, the resin that makes fiberglass work easy. We came up with this idea of doing a tool show to inform the uninformed about tools. I've been working with tools my whole life. My background is film, as a lot of you may know. I did cars for shows like Grease. We did all the cars, 48 cars in a couple of weeks, all the way up to Fast and Furious, Triple X, Taxi, Pixar cars, quite a few things, plus a lot of sharks and different things for other films. So I've got a lot of experience with tools, and I'd like to pass as much of that on as possible because today's generation doesn't know a lot. Sorry if I'm a little raspy, but I've been working in my attic at my house because I don't just work here, but I work at home. And I think I sucked in a few rats and things while I was up there, fiberglass mat, a little of everything. It's in an attic. Anyway, we had a guest scheduled and kind of talked about doing it with and without a guest. It was back and forth, and last second, he got a little nervous, and I didn't want to push him, so we may do it at a different time. So what I did is I replaced the guest with another guest. That's me. I decided to interview myself in a way, or give you my bio, because I know a lot of times when I'm interviewing somebody, they mention what I've done on this, what I've done on that, and I don't know how many people know some of the things I've accomplished through brute force, if nothing else. Not out of skill, it's basically out of stupidity, because I didn't know it couldn't be done, so I plowed ahead and did it. But a lot of people see me at car shows in different places, and they all kind of assume that I'm rich and that my dad handed me a bunch of money and I couldn't go wrong or couldn't fail, which is what most people assume when they see someone who's got something like a business. Anyway, that's about the furthest thing from the truth. And that's why I thought to clear the air for myself and a lot of other people. I started out the hard way. I started out on my own. When I was a kid, I was born in San Francisco. My dad was a manufacturer, fabricator, and an inventor. So he invented all kinds of things, and then he would take them to market, and I kind of saw business being built. I was only like 8 or 10 years old when I started realizing what he did for a living. For a while, I thought he was in the mob. But I paid attention, and when I was old enough, he'd let me come to the shop and do welding and grinding and sweeping, mostly sweeping. And I was raised by my grandmother. My dad and my mom were splitting up when I was young, so I didn't really have a family life. In fact, I had almost no family life. So I pretty much raised on the street, would go work at my dad's shop. Then I would go home, go to school, do all the kind of stuff kids do when they're trying to stay out of trouble. And I'd go over to my grandmother's, and that's where I slept because we didn't really have a house at that time. Anyway, it was kind of funny. My grandmother almost became my mom. And she'd give me little advice once in a while. I was too young to pay attention to it, but it sank in, and I thought about it for years later. And one of the quotes she used to tell me over and over, which at the time, again, I thought it was stupid, but it was something like, a man is not a failure who has never reached his goal in life. The man who is a failure is the man who set no goals to reach for. Anyway, I was 10 years old the first time I heard that. Then I was 11, then 12, then 13. She tended to repeat herself. But it did sink in, and I didn't realize it. Then I started thinking, well, if I'm ever going to amount to anything, I got to set a goal, no matter what the goal is. Set it low and achieve it. There's a couple problems with setting goals. Most people set them so low they're easy to achieve. So you try to set a goal of whatever it is and set it at something you think you can achieve. And then as soon as you get there, either above that point or at that point, set a new goal. Don't just stop and say, hey, I did it. I'm going to go retire now. I'm 12 years old. And one of my first goals was I was going to start my own business. I think I was 10 years old. And the way to do it, because I didn't have any money, was I would go around and find where somebody threw out an old TV. This is way back when we had vacuum tubes. So I'd find a TV at the curb. I'd ask the people if I can have it. I didn't just take it. I'd get my wagon. I'd go put it in the wagon. I'd take it home, and I'd start playing with it, just adjusting the knobs and trying to learn about TV. Next thing you know, I'd get the picture. The screen would light up. Then I'd notice it rolled, or it did this or did that, so I'd start playing with the controls, and it didn't take long until the thing was perfect at the time. So I put a little ad in the newspaper, wait a couple weeks for the ad to come out. That was before the internet. And I'd turn around and sell it for $25 or $30. Anyway, it didn't take long till my grandma's house was absolutely stuffed with TVs. Looked like a TV repair shop. Then people started hearing that I was doing this. So I started fixing their TVs. And some I couldn't fix, but most of them I could. And a lot of times I'd go to we had little dime stores that you go in, they had a tube tester. So you take the little vacuum tube out, put in the tester, and tell you if it's good or bad, and you buy a tube. I was starting to accumulate a lot of money this time. I think I had $20-30 in my bank account. So I could buy tubes, put them in the TV. I'd clean up the case, sometimes restain it, turn around and sell it. And anyway, I moved on. I thought, well, I've achieved this goal. I'm the 10-year-old TV repairman on the block. So then I thought, well, bicycles aren't that hard. I've got one. So I started playing with bikes. My dad taught me how to weld, and didn't take long until I was customizing bikes for kids. That became hot. Then, of course, school teacher heard that I could weld, so I was welding football lockers for the school and doing different things like that. So what I would do is I'd set a goal, achieve it as quick as I could, and then set a new goal and move up. And I try to make each goal higher. But I also had standards. There were certain things I would not do. Back then, there was drugs, and people were selling drugs, and I decided I'm not getting into that. I'm not going to do it. Even though I can make a lot of money, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to try to stay clean, stay out of trouble, and do what I think is the right thing. I kind of like answering to a higher source. So one of the things I started with was I started buying more and more tools as they were affordable. I'd find them in swap meets and different things. And then I found a brush one time that looked kind of weird. And I was inclined toward art. My dad was an artist. My uncle was an artist. My mom was an artist. So I took this brush and I started going around showing people, say, what is this? I've never seen a brush like this. Pretty soon somebody said, oh, it's a pinstriping brush. I think it was my grandfather, because he used to pinstripe cars way back when he was young. He's a pinstriping brush. I go, what's pinstriping? So they explained it and showed me a car that had striping on it. So I took the brush and I found some paint. I think the brush cost me $5. I found some paint. I started laying down lines. And it didn't take long. At first, they looked absolutely horrible. Then pretty soon, they started getting straighter and thinner and straighter and thinner. And then I could start doing curves. And some kids down the block wanted me to pinstripe their wagon. So I did that. Then we had some bikers lived up the street from us. One of them came down. It was a Hell's Angel. He kind of asked me to pinstripe his motorcycle. One of those kind of asks where you don't say no to him. So I striped his motorcycle. Next thing you know, a few of his buddies came down. Of course, they didn't pay, but it didn't take long until he started, liking it and paying me to do it. And next thing you know, I'm painting motorcycles for people, pinstriping them. Then I had to expand. I think it was like 12 then. So I bought one of the motorcycles off one of the bikers. It was a 3-wheeled Harley Davidson, one of those meter-made bikes. And it was the one that had the box on back and 3 wheels, and it was a 45 cubic inch with a shifter on it. I think I got it for $50. It was some ridiculously high price at the time, I thought. So I got that. The main reason I got it, I needed transportation. I was too young to drive. I figured the cops wouldn't hassle me on a motorcycle. And the neatest thing was it had this big box on back. So I could open the box, put my pinstriping brushes in, but now I was mobile. I could go on the road and go do things and work for people, paint things, take my tools. So I drove around that for a few years. I think till I was like 17, made lots of money, would stash the money inside the bike. I'd hide it in little compartments that it had on it, toolboxes, and was doing pretty good for my age. At times, I even lived in the bike. By this time, my dad and mom had gotten divorced, and they kind of moved on, and I moved out of the house and was on my own. So then I started thinking I got to up this. I've got the bike. I've got a successful business for a kid. So I wanted something bigger. I got myself a Harley. 2-wheeler, 1950 Harley chopper, started riding that around. And of course, because of the Harley and it was a chopper, everybody thought I was a biker, even though I was wearing a t-shirt and Levi's and tennis shoes. I didn't look like a biker, didn't act like a biker, kind of far away from being a biker, but I was a biker. So I started going, and a lot of these bike guys started having me come in and do little dents on their, not do dents, but take dents out of their gas tank, their fenders, paint them, start molding the frames. Then I found a whole new market there. So I started doing custom painting on motorcycles. I tied in, I took that business to a magazine. There was a magazine called Custom Chopper Magazine. And then it was Big Bike. Larry Comferman was the editor of Custom Chopper, moved over to Big Bike. And since I could draw and I had a little bit of a tendency to be able to write, I started talking him into letting me do how-to stories on painting, custom painting on motorcycles. A lot of people may not realize it. You can look this up in the archives. I started doing weird stuff, just trying to come up with ideas because I got $100 an article to do this. I had a camera, I shot photos, and I turned the stories in. But I did some on spin painting where we spin a motorcycle, dump paint on it. I did sanding art where you paint the bike like 10 different colors and sand through the different colors and then clear coat it so it looked like little scratches in different colors. I did mural painting. I just went on and on for years, did hundreds of articles for him. Then it got to the point that I thought, well, I'm kind of a successful writer. I've got a bunch of articles under my belt. I branched into guns and ammo, doing stories on guns, started doing stuff on cars, moved over into cars, got in with Hot Rod Magazine, started thinking I need to get a job doing cars. I've been doing motorcycles so long. So I went out and got a job at a local body shop and started taking dents out of cars. And I'd go around like I was basically sanding by hand, and I'd see everybody with this thing called an air file, pneumatic sander that would just do the work for you. And I go up and I try to borrow it, and the guy turned me down, say, no, I paid for this. It's my tool. You're not using it. And I'm working my butt off doing it by hand. I couldn't afford one of these things because they cost too much. And then I realized, it isn't right to go borrow a tool because I don't have one. This guy did work hard to get it. Because of him working hard and earning it and buying it, he made his job easier. So I was just bound and determined I was going to get an air file, which seemed like a low goal at the time. But I remember working months and months, getting my air file. Then I got a DA sander. Then I got this. Then I got that. It wasn't long till I was probably doing more body work than him at the shop. I had the biggest toolbox with the most tools. By then I had a car, and I was almost shop manager. Got to the point that I was just getting ready to be asked. The owner told me he wanted me to run the shop for him, and I was doing customizing on the side of my own vehicles. At that point, I decided, no, rather than work for him, I'm going to start my own business. So I moved over to El Segundo. I rented a little shop over here. I didn't know how I was going to make second month's rent. I remember the rent was $600 a month. I came up with $600, told the landlord I didn't have last month's rent. He trusted me, gave it to me for the $600 and says, pay me next month. And this is kind of weird how this happened, but I go in and I'm working on my car. A couple days later, a guy comes up and knocks on the door and says, can you fix a movie car for me? In fact, that was one of my guests, Dave Martyr. I go, yeah, I think so. What's wrong with it? It was totaled out in a car crash they did on the block in front of my shop. He goes, we need it by tomorrow morning. I go, yeah, I can do it. So they rolled the car into the shop. I called a few friends to come in and help me, kind of instructed them what I wanted to do. We fixed the car. We stayed up all night. There's probably 10 of us working on it. Next morning, Dave came in to pick up the car. It was done. It looked nice. We painted it. He took off with it, and he told me, so I'm going to put you in my Rolodex now. I had no clue what that meant. Years later, I found that out, was what it is. If you do something nice for the studios, they remember you, and they pass your name on normally, and they give you a lot of work. So from that point on, Dave and I became lifetime friends, and I've got lots of shows out of him since then, Fast and Furious, XXX, because he knows if I say I'm going to do something, I will move mountains to do it, because your words got to be good. You got to say what you're going to do, and you got to do what you say. And I learned that from my dad and my grandmother. They taught me this. I paid attention to it, and it's what's helped me out through life. Anytime I wanted something, I worked my butt off to get it. I set a goal, I'd achieve it. I'd set a new goal. I found out that almost without exception, you could do anything you want to do. If you want to be a producer, study it. Talk to producers. Just keep focusing on producer. If you want to be a director, okay, I'm going to be a director. Just start thinking of yourself as a director. Do everything you have to be a director. My daughter's going into medical school. She's decided that's what she wants to do. You could be a brain surgeon if you want to. There's almost nothing stopping you except yourself. And if you get that in your head and you don't expect the world to give you handouts and help you along the way and loan you money and do this and loan you tools, if you do that, you'll never make it. But if you just get independent and just set your mind to it, you can do it. I remember way back, I was building hang gliders. I got into the hang gliding phase for a while and started building hang gliders. And I needed a car. My car had broke down, and I saw a Shelby at a car lot for sale, 65 Shelby. The car was unbelievable. The car lot had put the wrong price on it on accident. And I drove by, saw it, ran home, told my dad, I said, hey, Dad, I need whatever it was, $3,000. They stuck a wrong price on the car. You can't change it because it's called false advertising. They have to sell me the car for that price. And I think it was like a $5,000 car at the time. And it was really funny because my dad, at this time, he was living like a block away from me, and he'd retired and all this. And he sat me down and he goes, Eddie, he says, you know I have the money. I go, yeah, I know. That's why I'm here. He goes, and you're not going to understand this now, but someday you will. He said, no, I'm not going to loan it to you. And I go, why not? It's not like it's hurting you. He goes, no. In fact, I can live quite comfortably loaning you the money or giving it to you, but I'm not going to. And says, someday you'll learn that I just taught you a valuable lesson. Anyway, it went, I think it was 6 or 7 years. I never spoke to my dad. I wanted nothing to do with him. I hated him for a while. I thought, man, he could have helped me. He could have done this. He could have done that. But what he did do, without me realizing it, he taught me the most valuable lesson in the world, that you have to do it yourself. Don't depend on anybody else. If somebody helps you, then be grateful. If they don't blame them. And years later, many years later, my wife and I got a business going, pretty successful. And my dad hit on hard times. He had invested some money. It went bad. And I got to loan him money. It was the neatest feeling in the world. And then he got on his feet. And then we were down. And he came up one day and he says, I know you're good for it. You want to borrow some money to bail your business out. I turned to him and I said, Dad, no, I don't want to. I appreciate it, but I'm going to make it. And I did. I just hustled. I sold things. I did things I didn't think I'd want to do or could do. I sold one of my favorite cars. I had a gun collection. I sold that. I didn't care. I was going to bail myself out, and I did. And like I say, I've learned a valuable lesson. No matter how bad times are, no matter how rough things are, you can bail out. I'm sure there's times you can't, and things can happen that you can't fix. But in most situations, just setting your mind to it is all you need. We get people coming up all the time saying, how do you start a business? That's simple. Start it. Don't think about it. Don't talk to people. Don't borrow money. Just start it. If you got an invention, build it. See if it sells. If it doesn't sell, you've lost your own money. You haven't lost your friend's money. Just do it. It's the absolute best advice I could give somebody. If you need to build something, buy the tools to build it. That's what this show is based on. You basically can do almost anything you want to do, like on a fabrication project by buying the tool and doing it yourself and save money over having someone else do it. In fact, that was one of my first experiences. When I was young, I took a car out to have a dent removed. And a guy at the body shop said, well, it's kind of complicated. I go, it's a dent. It looks simple. Just pop it out, which was an oversimplification. And he goes, oh, well, it's really, the metal's stretched and it's this and it's that. It's going to cost you X dollars. And I went away knowing I didn't want to pay it. And I went over to some body shop where they're selling tools. And I said, how much is a hammer? And one of those steel things, which was, I found out later, called a dolly. And he goes, oh, they're this much money. So I go, well, I can afford that. So I bought a hammer. I bought a dolly. I went home and I started tapping on the dent, just one little tap at a time. Didn't think I'd take it out. Took my time. I think it took me 3-4 hours. By the end of that time, the dent was gone. I didn't even chip the paint. I was just really, really careful. I learned that for the price he was going to charge me, I did it for a fraction of that. Now I owned a hammer and a dolly. And I just followed that through life. We're doing work on our house right now. We're cutting floors and putting down that floating hardwood. You can buy the tools, buy the hardwood, do it yourself, cheaper than you can pay Home Depot to come in and do it for you. And when you're done, you've got the experience. You've done it. You feel good about it. Somebody come in and say, hey, those are nice hardwood floors. Go, thanks. I did it myself. And there's a lot of pride in that. Plus, like I say, the experience you get out of it is invaluable. You can't get that anywhere. But again, there are some people who can't. But then if you can't, there's schools. I just came from a school today, Otis College, that teaches people how to do things. Teach you how to market, how to take your invention out, how to design, how to fabricate. You can go to school, you can get books. I started writing books years back, how to do bodywork, how to paint, how to do plasma cutting. There's not much you can't learn. If you don't have artistic ability, maybe have someone help you on that part. There's nothing wrong with asking for help. Pay the people back somehow. Do a barter system, trade them. But you can, like I said earlier, when I was in hang gliding, I went to the beach, watched some people hang gliding, bamboo hang gliders. I went home that night, built a hang glider of my own design, went back, crashed it, went back home, fixed it, went back, crashed it, went through this process a dozen times. And it wasn't long until I was winning some of the events with a hang glider. I had the lightest weight hang glider. I fabricated it myself. I started making them for other people. I got into the hang gliding business overnight. Then I thought, well, I'm not getting the mention that they do because they have their own magazine out. So I said, well, I'll start my own magazine. So I started a magazine called Man Flight magazine. And I started circulating. Next thing you know, I was in the publishing business, making my own magazine to push my own product. And if you look through history, you'll find that's what people have done. Edison, everybody goes, oh, he invented the light bulb. He's a genius. He got rich. No, he invented the light bulb. Nobody wanted it because they didn't have electricity. What are they going to do with a light bulb? So then he found out he had to set up the whole infrastructure. He had to go out and put the poles in the ground, make the generators, get the electricity to their house, and hook it up to a plug, and plug the light in for them, show them how to turn it on. That's when he made the money. So you don't let things stop. You don't say, I got this great invention. If I can only get the money for it, you'll never get anything. You'll never get your invention out. You'll never build anything if you have that attitude. You just got to do it. I think most of the successful people I've met have started from the ground up. Jay Leno was broke. Jay Leno was living in the back seat of a Buick for many years doing the Comedy Store. And look at Jay Leno now. Fortunately, he's still a nice guy. But he worked his way up from nothing. And maybe that's why he's a nice guy today. But some people, everything's handed to them. I know people that if you gave them $1 million in a year to do something in, they'd be broke and late. And it's just they don't have what it takes to produce things or to do it right or the scruples or the honesty. you gotta have a good solid foundation. You got to move forward and you got to do what you say you're going to do. But again, I don't think there's any limit to what people can do, especially Americans. We're known as inventors. That's what the whole country's founded on, invention. If we can't do something, we invent a way to do it. Of course, a lot of times building that invention may take longer than it would to build it in the first place or do it any other way, but that's what we tend to do. And then we can do it easier next time. So if I leave you with nothing else other than some motivation and knowing you can do whatever you want to do, because like I say, I was handed nothing. I fought every single step of the way to get to where I am today. And I've lost on deals. I've lost lots of money on deals, but it was my money. It was my right to lose it. But I found out what to do and what not to do, mostly the hard way. And they say you learn from your mistakes. I'll tell you what, I learned a lot. I made every mistake in the book on everything. I learned most of what I knew how to do by trial and error. And it's funny because I look back and all I remember was the error. I don't remember the times it went well. I guess you just file that away. Say, here's how you do it. It's kind of exciting, and I wouldn't have done it any other way. If I started over, I would rather start with nothing and earn my way up to what I have, which today is comfortable. I'm not rich, but I am comfortable, and I can feel good about myself. I can look in the mirror and not have to look over my shoulder. I haven't borrowed from anybody. I don't owe anybody anything. Everything I have, I paid for out of my pocket. So I hope this helps. I'd like to hear from some of you. If any of you have a story you'd like to tell about how to do things, tools that you've learned to use and that have helped you through life, let us know. You can go to our website. It's at EddiePaulsToolTalk.com. Again, sorry about the voice. Doing the best I can. As you can tell, I obviously don't let sickness take me down either. So thank you for listening. And again, EddiePaulsToolTalk.com.